Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 291 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 19 of A Dance with Dragons, which is Davos 3, and also marks the moment when Oldham Athletic returned to the Football League. So I just wanted that to be here as a marker in time, just so you know.
You probably should have put it right before, hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal.
I was thinking about it before I spoke, let me tell you.
Well, as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and probably chat about Oldham Athletic. And we're going to try on not to spoil any future plot points for you regarding A Song of Ice and Fire. Not so much about Oldham Athletic. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, well, then we're going to spoil things for you for both aspects. Regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing well, and I'm guessing you're doing pretty well, too.
I'm so happy. You would not believe how happy I am. And my throat, now we're about 72 hours after the game. My throat is now in a state where I can speak. But I've been like a kid whose voice is breaking for all week. Just occasional little
Oh, well, hey, that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yes. So for those not completely paying attention, I went to England to watch my team, Oldham Athletic, play at the National Stadium, Wembley, in front of 52,000 fans. And the winner of the game got to move up a division, and Oldham won it in astonishingly dramatic fashion.
Yes.
And it was something else. It really was. I know this sounds like hyperbole, but only once in my life have I been overwhelmed by emotion to the point of just being sort of like catatonic, like frozen. And that's when the instant when Lucas was born. I couldn't speak. I couldn't, just it hit me like a wave, and I was just like, oh. And now it's happened twice, because on Sunday at Wembley when we scored that third goal, I was absolutely beside myself. It was incredible.
Yes. And you texted me not long after the game ended, greatest moment in human history.
Yeah. That might be hyperbole, but it was so good. It really was.
Awesome.
It was an incredible thing. And I will say, Oldham beat a team called Southend United, and I will forever have a place in my heart for Southend United, because they were terrific on the day, and they were desperately unlucky to lose. You could argue that Oldham were the better team on the day, but it was very close. But the nature of the way we won, from coming from 2-1 down to win 3-2 with 2 quick-fire goals out of the blue, was just daylight robbery. It really was. And they must have felt awful. And I rode the train, the tube, away from the stadium with all of them, because Southend is on the east side of London. So they were all going home by tube. So it was me and 30,000 Southend fans on the train. And they were all incredibly gracious. And,
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. Well, you sent a picture to me of the I guess it was moments after the game, basically the game-winning goal, right? When all the players are celebrating, and your sister is right there, and you are just off camera right next to all the cheering
We've now found one of me as well, so I'll post
yes.
I'll post that to the Discord server so you can see that I was really there. And it's kind of a funny picture, because everyone's cheering and going crazy, and I've just got my hands on my head in like disbelief. Well,
I've never actually seen I've not seen the drama of the end yet, but so the way I followed it, I spent the first half just following it on like Google Score. I Googled the game,
Right,
and I was watching the score. But when Oldham equalized it in the second half, I was like, okay, I need to step up my attention here. So I just found a YouTube stream of this English guy who was watching the game with a camera on him and just talking about what he's seeing because I couldn't find a live feed.
High quality. Yeah.
Yes, it was the best I could do on short notice. And he was cracking me up because he was banning people in the chat that were irking him, and he was cussing up a storm.
Was he biased? Was he cheering for one team or the other?
Not really. No,
Okay.
he wasn't. He's quite the character. He had a shirt on that said something like "alert fart incoming" or something. Really. So.
British people.
But then, so when Oldham fell down and then equalized it 2-2 in extra time, I think I'm using the right words. We've used tie it in overtime.
Yeah.
But
You're doing great.
he was all excited and talking about we're going to penalties and it's going on, and all of a sudden he's like, they scored again. Oldham scored again. But he didn't really explain what was happening, just that they scored again. So I don't really understand how it went down.
So two other slightly funny things. I missed Oldham's first goal. I was in the bathroom. Stupid beer. So
at least you got to see two more.
Yeah. And where we were, the end of the ground we were, all 5 goals happened in the goal right in front of us.
Oh, nice.
Yes, that was kind of nice. And Carson had a similar experience to you. She was trying to follow the game. So I'd subscribed to the channel that let you have it. But I said to Carson before I left, I said, do you want me to leave that subscription going so you can watch the game? And she said, no, cancel it. And so she then got excited and she started looking. So she was watching the BBC's minute-by-minute coverage of it, which kind of like is a sort of minute-by-minute scroll.
Yeah,
But then Alex, our neighbour, told her that she could get Radio Manchester, who were doing live commentary. So she listened to it on Radio Manchester. But I never cancelled it. She could have just watched it. I was like, if I'd known you were interested, I would have mentioned it, but I didn't bother cancelling it.
She should have known who she was dealing with and thought he didn't cancel it.
Yeah, that
he hasn't gotten around to doing that yet. So
I have a completely different story, but a Carsonism aimed at me, which cracked me up. So I was sitting with them the other day, Carson and Lucas, and they were having a little back and forth about something. And what it was, Lucas was saying, hey, you didn't get me the chocolate I asked for. She'd gone to the store and bought him some chocolate. He said, you didn't get me the chocolate I asked for. And Carson was like, oh, yeah, I went to the other store and they don't have the one you want, but I got something similar. And he was like, he wasn't being snotty about it, but he was like, okay, but you did then go to the store where they do sell the chocolate. He said, yes, but by that time I'd already bought you this chocolate, so I didn't buy you the chocolate you wanted. And she said, I can't have that much chocolate lying around in the house with Dad in his condition.
Dad in his condition? What is Dad's condition?
What condition? And she said, the inability to not eat my chocolate.
That's the condition. I understand that condition.
So I was like, man, I got an innocent bystander hit by this drive-by.
Yeah, you're taking strays over here. What did I do? Ate her chocolate, I guess.
Coming back to the footy, I recommend to everyone to see the YouTube highlights. It was Oldham against Southend. It is really incredible. It was an incredible game. I mean, as exciting. I mean, the stakes were so high that a good game was going to be fantastic, But this was a fantastic game all by itself, and the stakes just made it delirious.
That much more. Yeah. I was hooked. I was trying to write the show notes for this week's episode, and I just had to give up because I was too focused on what the English guy was. It admits banning people. What he was telling me was happening.
and a thank you to Jenny of Allstones, because I couldn't have gone without her help. So thank you so much to her.
Yes, we had a good time. We had. I know you haven't had a chance to listen yet, but when you get to, we had a fun episode, I believe.
Excellent. All right, let's get down to business. How do we leave Davos Seaworth Well, as we saw Davos, he was sneaking into White Harbour with as little fanfare as possible. He noticed new defences around the harbour and city and a new fleet of ships. He learned that the Manderlys are harbouring refugees fleeing Ramsay Bolton's depravities, and that the Manderlys are also amassing soldiers. Most importantly, he discovered that the Lannisters held Lord Wyman's son and heir, Wyllis, captive. He considered going home, but instead knocked on a postern gate of the castle and requested an audience with Lord Wyman. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, after nearly 3 weeks of confinement in spacious and comfy chambers, Sir Marlon Manderly informs Davos that his lordship will see him now.
Just point of order. Who was confined? Was it Davos or some? No,
It was Davos, yes. Sir Marlon.
What did I do?
Just because this guy knocked on the gate?
Told you once, don't open that postern gate.
Well, Sir Marlon is actually the commander of Manderly's garrison and cousin to Lord Wyman himself. Marlon and several household guards escort Davos to the Merman's court.
Despite having been to White Harbour many times, Davos had never stepped foot in the new castle, let alone the Merman's court. Every inch of the room's walls, floor and ceiling are decorated in a nautical theme. Davos had hoped to speak one-on-one with Lord Wyman, but this meeting will be anything but private.
The court was crowded, with women outnumbering men 5-1, and most of those men were either old or young boys. But a dozen men stood out from the crowd. Davos could tell by the similarity of their looks that they were related, and the towers and bridge sigil that adorned their clothes left no doubt they were Freys. Davos easily read their expressions. They wanted him dead.
Davos receives no more warmth from Lord Wyman's icy expression. Surrounding the Lord's high seat are his cousin, Sir Marlon, his good daughter, Lady Leona, a maester named Theomore, and Wyman's 2 granddaughters. Maester Theomore rattles off a long list of the Lord's titles and asks Davos to kneel. As a king's hand, Davos is not permitted to kneel to anyone but the king. Davos adds his own titles, Admiral of the Narrow Sea, Lord of the Rainwood, and Hand of the King.
Lady Leona comments that he's an admiral without a fleet, a hand without fingers, to a king without a throne. Davos asks for that private audience, but Lord Wyman says that he has no secrets from his friends and kin. Davos asks if that includes the men who killed his son, pointing to the Freys. Sir Jared Frey steps forward, saying the Red Wedding was Robb Stark's work. He and his Northmen turned into wolf beasts. Robb tore the throat out of one Frey and was moving to kill Lord Walder when Wendel Manderly stepped between them.
Davos is so stunned by the absurdity of the lie that he gasps. He names Sir Jared a liar, and Jared draws steel. Wyman insists he put his sword away. Lady Leona speaks up that the Onion Knight comes to ask for blood. If the Queen should ever hear of this audience with a known traitor, she might kill Wyllis, Wyman's son and heir. Davos names Tommen called Baratheon an usurper as a bastard of Cersei and Jaime Lannister. At that, the Freys want Davos's head. Theomore asks for proof, but without Edric Storm as a comparison, all Davos can offer is the word of Stannis Baratheon.
Seems good enough to me.
Well, to you perhaps, but you're not a Frey.
That's true. Thankfully. Unsurprisingly, that was insufficient proof. Words are wind, says Winifred Manderly, Wyman's eldest granddaughter. Leona lays into Davos as well, and he realizes she's speaking from fear. Davos questions his own agenda. How can he ask Wyman to sacrifice his own captive son for Stannis' cause? Wyman asks why Stannis is in the north now, when he'd never come before. Davos says he's come to save the kingdom from the wildlings and the Ironborn.
Maester Theomore dismisses both as realistic threats. Leona says that Stannis' Red Witch is more of a threat than the wildlings or the Ironborn. Davos explains that though Queen Selyse and some men have adopted R'hllor, most, including him, still worship the Seven. Lord Wyman cuts in, saying that the Lannisters have offered his son back for Wyman's proven loyalty. Warden of the North, Roose Bolton, asks only that Wyman give up his claims to the Hornwood lands, and Lord Walder Frey offers a bride for Wyman and husbands for his granddaughters. All of this produces a much-needed peace. What does Stannis offer?
Davos, channeling his king, offers Wyman a chance to do his duty. How could that not stack up to the other offer?
Yeah, it's close. I mean, we weigh this up on the big scales of the...
Right.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Marlon asks how many other northern lords have declared for Stannis. Davos can only offer Arnulf Karstark, which, Marlon is quick to point out, is not a lord but a castellan. He asks about Stannis' holdings. Davos counts the Night Fort as Stannis' seat, and he holds Dragonstone and Storm's End. After disparaging the Night's Fort as a dreadful ruin and pointing out that Dragonstone and Storm's End will soon fall, he asks how many men Stannis can field. When Davos, who knows the number is too small, fails to respond, Marlon has his answer. Stannis brings only enemies and death.
Wyman has heard enough. Asking Davos if he has anything else to say, Davos replies, "There will be death. You lost a son at the Red Wedding. I lost 4 on the Blackwater. All because the Lannisters stole the crown." He urges anyone to look at Tommen with their own eyes and question Stannis' claim. It's vengeance Stannis offers, vengeance for all those murdered, including their Lord Eddard, King Robb, and the 2 princes.
Yes, a girl exclaims. It's Wylla, Wyllis' youngest daughter. She adds that if Stannis can give vengeance for what the Lannisters did to the Starks, they should support him. She tells of how long ago the Starks gave them land and security, and the Manderlys swore to always be their men. Theomore says that there are no more oaths to the Starks, as the house is extinguished. Wylla replies, "That's because they killed them all."
In all caps in our version.
Right.
Rhaegar Frey lauds Wylla's loyalty, adding it will be a wonderful virtue when she marries little Walder. However, how Stark is not entirely extinguished. Arya Stark lives, and she is set to marry brave Ramsay Bolton, so she should give Ramsay her loyalty. That only sets the girl off more. She will never support Ramsay Snow. He forced Lady Hornwood to marry him, then locked her away and made her eat her fingers.
That gets nods and comments of approval from the crowd. One man adding that Ramsay is a monster. Rhaegar says it was Robb who was the true monster. He abandoned the Northerners for a better kingdom along the Trident. Then he abandoned the Riverlords by marrying a Westerner. The young wolf was a vile dog who died like one.
Davos notices a momentary look of disgust on Wyman's face before the Lord nods and agrees with Rhaegar. Wylla says it's all untrue, but her mother has had enough and drags the girl out of the court by her braid, removing Davos' only friend in the room. Her sister, Winifred, apologizes for the child's willfulness. Lord Wyman addresses Davos. He has heard enough treason. He commands his guard to seize Davos and for Sir Marlon to remove the man's head and hands.
Well,
we knew this was coming.
Yes, sadly we did.
Yeah. Except, do we? That's going to be the main topic of discussion here, I think.
Right.
So, Davos... The thing is, it's easy to say in a sentence Davos was held for 3 weeks, but Davos would have gone berserk if he'd been held for 3 weeks. It's such a long time. You know, I mean, Davos is on a mission here to bring back... And if they... Even a gentle incarceration would drive him but crackers, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, he was held for 4 days plus a fortnight, which is what, like 18 days? Mm. So, I mean, he had what he called spacious, comfy chambers, and he was able to watch the ship, the Shy Maid, that he came in on. He was able to watch it sail away after 4 days, where he and the captain had agreed on 3 days. So the captain hung around for one more day before giving up on him.
Yeah, but obviously the tone was set. He knew he wasn't going to get a good reception, given that if you're going to give someone a good reception, you don't make them wait 18 days for that good reception.
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't, the chapter starts off with Marlon Manderly referring to Davos as smuggler. The Lord will see you now, smuggler.
Yeah.
Not typically a title for a welcomed hand of the king and envoy. So, and then, he did consider last chapter. I think it was last chapter. He was thinking about, him going in and speaking with Lord Manderly, and he thought about the fact that lords like to make you wait.
Yeah.
To show their authority and such. But this has been excessive. Maybe wait a few hours, possibly a day, but 3 weeks is quite excessive. Maybe during that time he was rationalizing it as he knows the Freys are here. He saw the ship, the Lion Star.
Well,
and
true.
He was told
maybe
that they
waiting for the Freys to leave before giving him an
Yes.
audience. Yeah.
Didn't want him out and about and them see, hey, I know that guy. That's Davos Seaworth.
But then, unfortunately, that's not how it panned out, because as soon as he walked in there, he was told, Wyman was only going to see him with his friends in attendance, and there was nothing he was going to keep from his friends, and his friends included those Freys. So
Right. And again, before words are even spoken, not encouraging for a successful negotiation here.
Yeah. So you questioned whether Wyman could seriously mean that they're friends. I mean, Wyman is in that terrible position that Davos can sympathize with. The thought of losing a son is too much to bear, and so you call your enemies your friends.
Yes.
How deeply he means it? Probably not very deep.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that there's any respect for the Frey Bolton Lannister side, but what's he gonna do? His son Wyllis is captive of the Lannisters, and the Boltons are wardens of the North here in the North, so
yeah.
He's kind of stuck. But there was one line that George Martin fed us. It was kind of a throwaway line, and I just wondered what he was trying to get at. There's a line that the crowd was 5-1 females to males, and that the men in the crowd were either all old men or young boys. And I wondered what we were supposed to get out of that showing the loss of war, what war has done to the men in between.
That's what I assumed. But you seem to have another
too.
Thought in your head.
No, I assumed that as well. I think maybe it was trying to show that they're tired of fighting and want peace, that they've lost a lot of good men.
Do you think maybe Manderly is actually amping it up a little bit more than it's truly there? He's, saying, hey, the bravest and the best, keep them out of here.
Yeah, maybe. I had not thought of that.
Yeah. But why really? I mean, But I mean, the thing is, the winning side, the Bolton Lannister Frey side, don't need any of his strength. They just need his peace. They need loyalty from him. So that fact. But if he's plotting against them, which there's definitely reasons as you read this chapter to think maybe Wyman Manderly is not about to behead Davos Seaworth.
But a fantastic actor.
A good actor apart from the one time when the mask slipped. Yes.
Right, maybe.
So if he is plotting against them, playing down his strength makes a certain amount of sense. The Freys go back and say, yep, he's going to bend the knee and he's got no forces anyway.
Right. All we saw were old men and young boys. We didn't even see any warships, which are in a section of the bay that can't be seen from.
But it can be seen from the castle where they are.
It can. So. Right. Davos did see it from the castle. That's true.
But I think chapter's always interesting when we get new characters, and especially female characters who've got interesting voices. I liked Leona Manderly, who's she was born a Woolfield, but she is Wyllis's wife, and Wyllis is the son and heir who is currently captive. So her animosity towards Davos is obvious and clear. It's her husband whose life is on the line here. If Wyman were to say, yeah, let's hear this guy out. Yeah, actually, you're right. I'm going to bend the knee to Stannis. That's not good news for her family.
No. Certainly understandable that she's inclined to reject this offer here.
Right. And her elder daughter, Winifred, is equally opposed. But then the other daughter, Wylla, the younger daughter, who's like 16, something like that, I think.
Yeah, I'd say mid-teen, yeah.
Yeah.
I think 15-ish, 16, yeah.
I think I saw she was born 284 and we're in 300 now.
Okay, yeah, so she'll be 16 this year, if not already.
So probably not Jon's mother is what we're concluding.
Right,
okay.
We can be sure about that regarding this Wylla.
But she voices exactly what you want to hear from the Manderlys. That's what they should be thinking. But now, to get into the sort of the meat of this, and it's a little bit early to do it because it's the whole chapter is this. I had a thought as I read it for like the umpteenth time. I was like, you know what? The reason that she's getting dragged out of that hall is because they all agree with her, and she's too young to have been told to not say those things. Every one of them thinks exactly what Wylla said, but only she voiced it because she wasn't part of the plan. She's the Edmure Tully of the Manderlys.
Edmure Tully. The only one who didn't get the memo. Exactly.
And that look of disgust on Wyman Manderly's face at what the Freys are, the lie the Freys are telling him, which is clearly a lie, is...
Yes, right.
And that's why she got dragged out of the room. Everybody's acting. They're all acting. They all want the Freys to believe that they are bending the knee. And Wylla doesn't understand it. And let me just sort of like reinforce what I'm saying. Because what she says is so intrinsic to their nature. It's like, This is what we said. When they gave us accommodation here in the north, we bent the knee and we said we would always be loyal to them. And they're not gone. And even if they are, we should be loyal to their memory and fight their people who usurped them. And every Manderly must believe that. Why would one 16-year-old girl believe that if everybody above her had not been inculcating her in that story since she was born?
Yep, makes a lot of sense. She's either incredibly brave and selfless to side with Stannis on principle, or she's failing to understand the possible consequences to her father if they side with Stannis.
Or she's second favorite daughter and doesn't care if he comes back.
That's right.
my little theory.
No, I think what you said makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of us would agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. And the thing is, to a certain extent, having this conversation in full view of the Freys feels like an act. Feels like it's just a performance for the Freys' benefit.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Yeah, and it's really just the look that Wyman gives Davos. It's any kind of like, or not gives Davos, that Davos sees. He doesn't look at Davos with a look. He's looking at Rhaegar Frey. Davos notices there's a look. I think the line is something like, the look you give a bug that is in need of a heal, or something like that.
Right.
So
It
momentarily.
wasn't like a big roll of the eyes towards Davos. These guys.
Just wait a minute.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we don't know. This is speculation. I mean, like, according to the prior book, Davos is beheaded and his head is displayed on the... So we might be wrong, but I think there's enough grounds here for hope. And
yeah, right. Cersei got word that the Freys verified that the head and hands were Davos. So that's not great for Davos's future. But yes, I think you're right. There's enough little light shed with that look that Davos sees to give us some hope.
Do you think the 3 weeks was while their master sculptor made a mask of Davos in wax for this very thing?
That's what it is. I think the 3 weeks was the time it took to send a raven to King's Landing, tell Cersei, we have Davos Seaworth. What do you want done? Do you want him shipped to King's Landing? Her saying, behead him. I'll give you back your son. And then the raven getting back to White Harbor.
Interesting. Yeah. That makes sense on the timing.
Yeah.
Because you're right.
Maybe.
I mean, I get petty tyranny of making people wait to see you, but 3 weeks, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know,
Yes. Unless it really was like these Freys are just never leaving. Can't get them out of here.
I might as well have them in the room and pretend.
Right, at this point. Well, they're in the room, and they give an account of the Red Wedding that is so absurd that Davos gasps when he hears it. And it's not just that Robb himself turned into basically a wolf man, but that all of the Northerners, the way they explain it is that a warg is spread through a bite. And Jared says, this is known, like as Eerie or Jiqui would say, this is known. It's a fact. And so he turned all of his Northmen into wolfmen, and that Robb killed Jingle Bell, who actually did die in the Red Wedding.
At the hands of a Stark, yes.
Yes. Just a different Stark. It was Cat. And that after ripping the throat out of Jingle Bell, he went to kill Lord Walder. Sir Wendel Manderly stepped in between them and died bravely that way.
And Wendel Manderly would be Wyman's second son?
Yes. And when Jared's telling this, Wyman gets a little bit choked up when he speaks about him. And I really feel like that was authentic, whether he's being authentic in the rest of this discussion or not. I think he really was choked up about the loss of his son at that moment.
Yeah. And again, I mean, you've made the point and you're absolutely right. The Manderlys are in an impossible position. There's nothing you can do here. But there's three courses of action, and none of them are great. One of them is to bend the knee to the winners, just accept the victory and move on with your life. The second one is to say no. No, I reject it. I reject you guys. But Wyllis is a dead man if you say that. The third one is the subterfuge of you make a show of taking the first route, but secretly you're working the other way. So.
Yeah.
None of it's great.
No, it's not. But the third option you mentioned there is a realistic possibility.
Right.
I mean, do what you have to do and say what you have to say to get your son back, and then act accordingly.
Yeah.
Maybe by that point, even if he's not fully committed, Wyman is not fully committed to this cause, maybe by the time Wyllis gets back to White Harbor, Wyman would have to decide, you know what, I'm just going to have to go with it at this point because we can't defeat this force on our own.
Right, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that at this moment he is not thinking, I'm going to get Wyllis back and then figure out what I have to do next.
So Davos tells them all that Tommen is not Robert's son, and we know this to be true. But proof is a problem, and the loss of not having Edric Storm adds to that. But they would be half brothers if Tommen was Robert's son. Then Edric and Tommen would be half brothers. The fact that half brothers don't look alike is not very strong evidence anyway.
Agreed. Yes.
I mean, the dying words of Jon Arryn, that's pretty compelling. The old
seed is strong.
The seed is strong. Really? He said that.
Did he? Well, he must have meant that Cersei's children are not Robert's. What else could you possibly conclude from that?
Was he choking on a seed at the time?
I had the same thought you did. Even seeing Edric or Gendry or Maya Stone, doesn't prove that Cersei's kids are not Robert's. I mean, I know families who are all 100%, the children are all 100% from the same parents, that, most of the kids have brown hair and brown eyes, and then, one kid is blonde hair and blue-eyed.
Yeah.
It's, but physical looks is all Stannis has, and people are going to see what they want to see. Those who want to believe that the children aren't Roberts are going to see that, and those who want to believe that they are will.
Exactly. It's not going to change anyone's opinion because the Freys will say, yeah, he just looks different. And the Manderlys, if they are Team Stannis, are going to say, well, that's proof. So, I mean,
right.
In neither case does it actually move any needles at all.
No, I agree.
The other perception problem we have here is brought up by Lady Leona. She mentions, and this is a Manderly thing in particular, because the Manderlys, amongst the North, the Manderlys are the one major family who are loyal to the faith of the Seven, not to the old gods, because they are transplants from the Reach, right?
Correct.
And it's Melisandre. Melisandre is a reason for them to reject Stannis, and this is actually where the Manderlys cover story, if it is a cover story, has the most verisimilitude, like how it seems to be true, because what she's saying, she's rejecting Stannis's claim to kingship because they would make them change religion, and that they will not do.
Right.
And so that's very compelling. If I was a Freys listening to that, I'd be like, nice, these guys are not going to side with Stannis because of their religion. That's awesome. Davos has a reasonable comeback, which is, we have people who've changed faith, but not everybody. There's plenty of people haven't, and I'm one example. I'm still, loyal to the faith of the Seven. So that's a decent comeback, but if I were the Freys, I'd be like, that's one in our column right there.
Yeah. Now, Stannis told Davos early on, while they were still on Dragonstone, he was keeping Melisandre around because people feared her, and he needed that on his side because he didn't have the biggest army, and he's not sitting the Iron Throne currently. But we had been concerned all the way back then that this could be a problem, that the lords would not embrace Stannis because of his association with this foreign god. And, this is only made worse by taking the Flaming Heart as part of his royal sigil. I mean, the Baratheon sigil is as old and as well known as, as a lot of other, as you can get, basically. And this isn't Essos, where there's a great deal of different religions being practiced. You've basically got the old gods and the new gods.
Right.
And, this was never going to sit well, and it's going to continue to be an issue, even if he sits the Iron Throne.
Yeah, and in the North, although the Manderlys are a unique case in that they have the faith of the Seven, none of the other Northern Lords are going to be any more willing to embrace a new religion. They've had the old gods way longer than the Manderlys have had the new gods. They're not going to change their religion, and so Stannis's recent plan to go on a campaign to lure mountain clans to his side, he definitely wants to play that bit down, I feel.
Maybe that's part of the reason that they decided to leave Melisandre at Castle Black, so as to not chance offending them when they're trying to woo them to their side, and them being the mountain clans, of course. And speaking of Stannis' army size...
Oh, yes.
Marlon Manderly asks about Stannis' army size, about support from other northern lords, and about his castles. And the answers, as we knew going in, are all very disappointing if you're weighing up which side you're considering joining. Now, I will say, Davos doesn't know about Moore's Umber joining half of the Umbers to Stannis. So he only mentioned Arnulf Karstark, who isn't even a lord. So, that's a problem. And the Night Fort is not going to impress anyone.
Right.
And he
at
also...
least anyone who knows anything about the North, anyway.
Right, yes. It sounds scary.
Yeah. In Dawn, they're all like, ooh, the Night Fort.
That sounds like a place I want to be. We do know, Marlon mentions, I think it was Marlon. It was kind of back and forth between Marlon and Maester Theomore. We're asking these questions. One of them mentions that Dragonstone and Storm's End are both going to fall fairly soon. We do know that Dragonstone does fall. That's when Loras Tyrell gets mortally wounded. But the siege of Storm's End was going along fine because that's what Mace Tyrell does best, siege Storm's End. But that all fell apart when Marjorie was arrested and Mace left for King's Landing. So
he didn't even do that well, to be honest.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, both times he sieged Storm's End, it didn't work. So maybe I shouldn't have said it's what he does best.
You know what? I think there might be a tunnel under here. They're bringing in grain.
But Davos doesn't even bother answering the question about the size of Stannis' army. And now maybe we see why the 3,000 men from the mountain clans is such a big deal to Stannis. He almost did a spit take when Jon mentioned 3,000 men. It's because we're told in this chapter he only sailed from Dragonstone with 1,500. So,
right,
that doubles what he sailed from Dragonstone
it would
with.
Technically triple it.
Triple it. Yes, triple it.
It is double what he already has, and therefore it would triple what he...
Yes, right. I get your meaning.
Yeah. So I wonder if again, doing the thought experiment that Wyman Manderly is actually just pulling a fast one on the Freys, he's thinking to himself, really? Can you not give me something here, Davos? So when he tells Marlon at the end to go and chop off his head and hands, and then Marlon comes back an hour later and says, he's in your special meeting room. He's like, no, I meant it. That guy's useless.
There's nothing I could do. He tells me the chance to do my duty? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's it. So you got. Yeah, I mean, Davos's final argument is one of vengeance, and that's a good argument, actually.
It is.
I mean, like, yes. Hey, it's not much. It's not something you'd really want to risk your entire house on, but at the same time, it is something that would sing to the Manderlys' need for vengeance, because the Manderlys can't possibly believe what the Freys are saying about the Red Wedding. Their son was killed by the Freys. That's what happened at the Red Wedding. Duh.
Right. If Wyman doesn't see that, I don't even know what to say. I have nothing to say about him.
And no one's denying that the Lannisters killed Ned Stark.
Right. And they're claiming he's a traitor, but they killed him.
Right. But he's not a traitor to the Manderlys, and the Manderlys aren't traitors to them. So it's a good final try by Davos, but whether it's worked or not, I guess we're going to find out down the line.
Well, it's definitely a compelling argument to be made to the right ear, but at least on the surface, the only ear that was right in this room was our brave Wylla, who says the obvious that the rest are either too scared to say or are intentionally claiming not to believe. And, she spells it out. We're backing the wrong side. These men murdered our people, our lord, our king. Mm-hmm. And she reminds them of the oath that the Manderlys took to the Starks and the awful treachery by the Freys. And Maester Theomore, I'm sure he's a smart guy, but offering up that the oaths expired because House Stark was extinguished, I mean, you're setting this girl up to prove her point. Yes, and why are they extinguished? Because they killed them all. Shouldn't we be seeking vengeance for that? But then her sister, Winifred, she calls them friends of Frey. And, I mean, first of all, seriously, that's got to be hard to hear. Now, either she is totally bought in on this lie that the Manderlys are cooking up themselves, or she's totally been brainwashed into believing that these people are friends,
or she's doing whatever she can do to get her father back.
Yes, yeah, that was what I was meaning by my first one.
Oh,
But,
I see.
But yeah, because surely,
but the way you said it was a lie. She might be like, I'll do anything. I don't care.
Yes,
I don't care about any of the geopolitical
I will friend
things.
you.
Right.
Like
exactly.
literally, I will befriend you if it gets me
Exactly.
my father.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see the distinction. But she has to understand. She seems to understand better than her sister does the perils her father is in if they like outwardly say we're backing Stannis Baratheon, like Wylla is suggesting that they do. But Wylla's argument about the why they should back Stannis, it stirs some support when she talks about Danella Hornwood's treatment
It does.
by Ramsay, and the man that speaks up, he's wearing white and purple with a crossed bronze keys clasp. That's the sigil of House Locke, and those are the colors of House Locke. And House Locke has suffered some heavy losses in the Riverlands. We watched Donald Locke be killed at the Red Wedding. So, those who know about Danella Hornwood and what happened to her and the Red Wedding, if the Manderlys are, just giving lip service here and they're not aware of it, they must be so befuddled by this strong support for the Freys and Boltons that, I saw it. I know what happened. Why are we backing these people?
Yeah. Then Rhaegar Frey, which is what a noble name, Rhaegar. He must be the least rat-faced of the Freys, I feel sure.
Right.
He paints Robb in a terrible light, and you've put in the notes with absurd claims, but actually I'm going to give Rhaegar some credit here. There's a ring of truth to what Rhaegar says.
There is a small ring of truth, yes, yeah. I agree.
He abandoned the North for a fairer kingdom along the Trident, kinda. Then he abandoned the Riverlords by marrying a Western wench, which undeniable. And the young wolf was a vile dog and died like one. Well, I mean, that's just Frey's opinion. But I thought that was well pitched by Rhaegar. He knows what he's saying.
Yeah, I will say Robb definitely kind of bailed on the Riverlords, riding back north before the war was won.
Yeah, and how is Winterfell recently? Yeah, somewhat abandoned. Yeah,
right. Yes, the north has been abandoned by the young wolf. I do get it. Robb was in a tough spot. His homelands were being invaded, his castle sacked, his brothers murdered. So he felt the need to go back. But in doing so, he was leaving the Riverlords, who bent the knee to him and chose him in this fight against the Iron Throne, in a really bad spot. So
exactly. Yeah.
I do see that. Yeah. But speaking of, you mentioned Robb marrying the first Western wench that he saw in Jane Westerling. Another marriage was mentioned in this chapter, and that is Wylla marrying little Walder. And when you read that, my first thought was, oh no, it's not even Big Walder. Little Walder is the worst of the two. He's kind of an awful kid.
I can never remember which one's which, so I wasn't too worried for her, but now I'm worried for her.
Little Walder is the bigger one.
Yes.
But
I can't remember if the big one was the mean one.
Oh, yes. He's the meaner of the two.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, great.
So that's not great. Maybe that's why she's like, no, we need to backstand
this. Let's fight those Freys. Tooth and nail.
Whatever it takes, keep me out of this.
Yeah. And as we've mentioned several times, this momentary look of disgust on Wyman's face at Rhaegar's words before he then, locks it back down again and says, wise words and true. Again. Yes. Kind of true, actually, and kind of wise to say them, but there's a chink in the armor, perhaps.
And that comes at the end of the chapter, and up to that point, there's really no reason to doubt the Manderlys because they have very good reason to not back Stannis.
Right?
Stannis is heavily losing this war, and that has no real, unless you believe that Tommen and Joffrey were not Robert's sons, he has no claim to the Iron Throne in the first place.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, exactly. The only thing is how seriously the Manderlys take their own vows. That's really
Right.
the only thing working in your favor. And if the Manderlys take their own vows seriously, then they believe Ned Stark. And if they believe Ned Stark, then they do agree that Stannis is the rightful king.
True. Yes, that is true. And if they could possibly believe that the Red Wedding went the way that they suggest it did, and that his son Wendel was killed by a wolf beast that was once Robb Stark. I mean, come on. But maybe Davos is just seeing what he wants to see there. We don't know. He could be seeing Wyman's and Turtle's struggle.
Right.
Maybe, he wants to accept this new pack, but his whole life has been a Stark loyalist, and so he's still internally struggling with the idea that Robb is actually the bad guy.
Yeah. And so the Freys, Freys always travel in packs. There's always a bunch of them. They must go off from this and talk to each other, and they must be like, yeah, I think they're with us, right? And I think the Freys are very transactional with the things that they do. And so I think that they, from their own perspective, would see what the Manderlys are doing and think that's the smart move. They may not like it, but they're making the smart decision here.
Right.
And
that makes sense.
The fact that there might be some underlying vow or sense of loyalty that would trump that is alien to the Freys, and they wouldn't see it coming.
Yes, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I could see that
perspective. I believe that this could, if this is a ruse, I believe it could work.
Yeah. I was just thinking, the one Frey who traveled by himself was Merritt Frey, and he ended up getting himself hanged. So,
well, you need
maybe it's good they travel in packs. So the chapter ends with Wyman ordering Davos to be executed, beheaded, removal of his hands, and like you started off the discussion saying, I mean, we saw Cersei's perspective of this playing out, and it's certainly, aside from that look, things add up like that's the path we're going to see here.
Right.
Like I said, 18 days. Likely that's the time the Raven was sent from White Harbor to King's Landing, got Cersei's orders. If you execute him, we'll give you your son back. Raven comes back. So this was certainly, on the surface, it was a kangaroo court. The outcome was decided before Davos walked into the court.
You know what, though? Just a thought has occurred to me. If the Manderlys are pulling a trick here, it would actually be broken if one of the Freys went, I'd really like to watch that execution.
Oh, yeah. That would be you're right. If that was the plan, that would be a problem.
Yeah. It'd be funny if you came back from that execution where one of the Freys came to witness it and say, the Axeman got a little bit over a thing and he chopped your guy's head off too. Sorry. But here's a definitely not wax model of Davos's head. All right. Let's do some spoilers. If you join us at the Tears of the Sustainers, you get the spoiler section, and it's always very fun and interesting. And basically, it's where I learn stuff that I should have known all along. But here we go. Good spoilers. Thank you, sir. How about some background? Who is Wyman Manderly? Why does he get titles? Tell me about his titles.
Right. Well, so I mentioned it in the summary, or you did. One of us mentioned it in the summary, that Maester Theomore announces Lord Wyman to Davos using a significant amount of titles. Like, okay, I'll give you the titles. He calls him Lord Wyman Manderly, Lord of White Harbor, Warden of the White Knife, Shield of Faith, Defender of the Dispossessed, Lord Marshal of the Mander, and Knight of the Order of the Green Hand. I mean, that is nearing Dany level for titles. He's getting close there. So, what do all these titles mean? I'll break them down for you. Lord of White Harbor, that one's pretty straightforward. Check. I don't think that requires much breaking down. Warden of the White Knife, like Wylla mentions, after the Manderlys were exiled from the Reach, they were eventually taken in by the Stark King. the Starks gave them the Wolf's Den at the mouth of the White Knife with the task of defending the river. So he is the Warden of the White Knife. Shield of the Faith, we've kind of hit on that in this chapter. Due to their southern roots, the Manderlys are one of the very few houses to worship the Seven in the north. Thousands of years later, they still practice that religion from their roots in the Reach, where they were, they practiced the faith. Till now, they haven't been swayed by their northern counterparts to change their religion. So, he is the shield of the faith. Defender of the dispossessed, that one's likely due to being a house of refugees from the Reach, the Gardener Kings having exiled them. So the Lord defends his dispossessed family, hence the defender of the dispossessed. However, we also saw last Davos chapter that Wyman took in a large group of refugees housed in the Old Mint. So, maybe they're known for that.
Practicing what he preaches.
Yes, exactly. Lord Marshal of the Mander, that is an old carryover title from the days when the Manderlys ruled the Mander River from their seat of Dustinbury. The Lord was dubbed Lord Marshal of the Mander.
When people visit White Harbour from the Reach, do they get a bit miffed about this one?
Maybe. You're nowhere near the Mander.
Yeah. So, that's my river you're the Lord Marshal of? I see how it is.
Right. And finally, Knight of the Order of the Green Hand, another holdover title from their Reach days. The Order of the Green Hand was a knightly order founded by the Gardener Kings of the Reach, whose sigil was a green hand on white. Membership was confined to only the most skilled and virtuous knights who proved themselves in tourneys that were held at Highgarden. However, the order died out on the field of fire when Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives laid waste to their opponents. Yet the Manderly Knights still claim membership in the order. They might be the only ones left who claim membership.
Because they'd already gone north before.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, maybe. It was well before. I mean, it was
before.
1,000 years before.
Rather than 300, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, comparison with the television show, none of this happens. Davos' story is just completely different, so I couldn't really find any parallels to even mention. Pedantry Corner, I didn't really see anything here. Fingers crossed for the character decisions, which we can't list in Pedantry. But
yeah, right.
News and Notes. This one's interesting, actually. I enjoyed reading this. Thank you for providing it. On his blog, not a blog, in the process of announcing a new Howard Waldrop animated feature that George Martin is associated with, he went on a bit of a rant anticipating the reaction of his fandom to this news. Well, I tell you what, it's good that you know how we're going to react to this kind of thing, yeah? Because you've given us plenty of opportunity to react to this kind of thing by doing it repeatedly. He anticipated that fans would be angry that he's focusing on something other than Winds of Winter, saying he knows we all hate everything else he does that isn't A Song of Ice and Fire related, and that he doesn't care about A Song of Ice and Fire any longer. He finished by saying that's entirely untrue. He does care about A Song of Ice and Fire more than anyone in the fandom can ever imagine.
I do believe that, but I also wonder, then, why are we a decade plus into the gap between books if he cares more about A Song of Ice and Fire than anyone in the fandom can ever imagine?
Yeah, if he'd worked 40 hours a week for a decade on that, this book would be ready.
You would think, unless this book is going to be the largest book in human history.
And I believe that he's written large swathes of it, and a lot of the work now is to try and pare it down and fit it together. I can see that would be work, but it is work that can be done. But he's distracted. He's distracted by his wealth and fame, and I think it's undeniable. I mean, and him getting, annoyed
Snippy
by us. I get it. I would be annoyed too if every time I blew my nose, someone was like, "Why weren't you writing?"
Right. I had to pee.
Yeah, exactly. I understand. I have some sympathy, but at the same time, you've strung us along this long. We've got a right to get a little bit annoyed with you, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I think both things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
He does have the right to do whatever he wants.
Right.
But, the fandom has a right, especially after a decade plus. Since I don't know when the book's going to come out, I'm just going to keep saying decade plus. Yeah. So
we're going to look so silly when people listen to this in the future. And it took 30 years.
Yeah. Oh, I forget what I was saying, but my point is, it's taken a really long time, and people are understandably concerned that we're never going to get the conclusion. And as to guys here doing a podcast for the past 6.5 years about this podcast, about this story, the fact that it may never get finished does leave you feeling like, well, what's the point of all of it?
Oh, man, now we've gone existential.
What's the point of life? Like, why? We're gonna get to the end of Dance with Dragons and be like, what now?
I was in such a good mood when we started this podcast. What have you done?
What has George done? He's ruined my mood.
I think these books will get written, but I think they will get written after George has passed away, honestly.
Yeah, that's based on the trend. It definitely feels like that is a possibility. Yeah. But in better, lighter news, how about we switch subjects? Yes.
Pick me up, Mackelly. Pick me up.
We have a new Buy Me a Coffee sustainer.
Woohoo!
Mariana has joined us at the Hedge Knight level, which is very exciting. Thank you so very much, and we look forward to interacting with you and getting to know you better.
Welcome, Mariana, milady. It's good to meet you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much.
And we have an upcoming call for our Buy Me a Coffee sustainers. We'll have a video call on June 17th. Details to be sent out to those in the loop.
That's right. As long as I remember to do it and to click the email this to my subscribers button.
That's handy if you do that, yeah. More news and notes. Still more news and notes. Keep going.
Yeah. We have a review from a Rod 1990 from Apple Podcasts Netherlands. And it's entitled Excellent Song of Ice and Fire Podcast, which, I mean, well said. Enough said.
Like that.
And it goes like this. I truly love the dynamics you have together. At the start of every episode, I wonder if you guys have experienced something personal worth mentioning. Aside, sometimes we mention things that actually aren't worth mentioning, but
yeah, we don't always have something worth mentioning.
Right.
Too much to ask.
After several minutes, sometimes, again, aside, sometimes a little more than several minutes, of chit-chat, it's down to business. I don't read along, but the brief summaries take me back to the action in no time. The rest of the podcast, including the discussions and pedantry, make me relive the story time after time. The sheer passion and effort you guys put into this podcast certainly shows. Keep up the good work, and this 5-star rating is well deserved. Wow. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rod 1990. That's very kind of you.
Yes, thank you. And I'm not sure exactly. I can't remember how long it's been that I discovered this was.
Yeah,
I discovered this week, but
we know you're this worldwide archaeological dig of hidden reviews.
So I apologize if this has been a long time coming.
Let's conclude this one. If this is goodbye to Davos, it's very sad. He's been a great character, and he deserved better than this. He deserved better than this, not just from the Manderlys, but from Stannis, to be honest.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he was too loyal. He could have fled the situation that he foresaw was not going to go well, especially when he learned that Wyllis Manderly was a captive of the Lannisters. But personally, if this is the end of Davos, I broke the cardinal rule of A Song of Ice and Fire and got too attached to a character because we know Martin is never afraid. Yeah, he's never afraid to kill off beloved characters. So, but we did know coming into this book how this story at least in A Feast for Crows, how it ends for Davos. Cersei commanding that he be beheaded, and Wyman obliging, and the Freys verifying. So,
but
we
have a lifeline. The lifeline being that look of disgust that flashed over Wyman's face when the Freys were describing their nonsense. It might have been nothing. Might have just had a tickle in his nose.
Right. He was about to sneeze, and that didn't. That could look like that same exact face. Right.
I just did a face for our listeners.
And it was perfect. He looked like he was looking at a bug that was in need of a heal. So I'm confused as to what's happening over there now. But also there's a lot of war prep going on for someone, the Manderlys, who are at least outwardly settling for peace here.
That's a good point, because you're right. I mean, again, they are exhibiting that they won't be any use in the field to the rest of this coalition. So why are they rearming?
Right.
That is another reason for hope.
That apple seller said that every boy old enough to hold a spear has a place in the garrison. So, and we saw the ships. So I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they're just trying to seek peace through strength.
Yeah. So Wyman and family couldn't accept Stannis' offer even if they wanted to. Not publicly, not in front of the Freys. Wyllis's life is completely at stake here. And
yes,
I will say that Wylla appears to not be the favourite child of her father, because she
I guess
she's more than willing to risk his life to get her say in front of everyone.
She's outwardly rooting against his life, basically.
Why don't you go ahead and kill him too? Like you did my uncle.
Yeah, I wonder if this discussion was in private, outside of the Freys' ears, would that have changed anything? I mean, maybe Wyman would be more true with his feelings, but he still couldn't bend the knee to Stannis, not while his son is captive of the Lannisters.
Yeah, honestly, I would ask Davos the same questions, what have you got? Who am I joining here? Oh, you and Arnulf Karstark? Oof.
Right.
Be still my beating heart.
Where do I sign?
Yeah.
And, Freys are going to fray. I mean, no remorse, no apologies for the treachery, cold-blooded murders.
Compounding the treachery with dishonesty as well,
Just rewriting history to make themselves look like the good guys, regardless of the absolute absurdity of the story.
Yeah. And up next, in the next chapter, we have a reek, which is always interesting to find out what's going on, mostly with Ramsay Bolton, to be honest, but,
True, yeah. Reek, it rhymes with tune in next week.
Yeah, very good. All right, there's 4 ways that you can help us out. You can leave us a positive review and a 5-star rating, as Rod1990 did. You can snag some merchandise while our store is open for a few more months at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. There you can become a sustainer, as Mariana did, at any of the various levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. The upper tiers get you the sustainer calls and the spoilers. Or you can give a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, or on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.